This segment of Labatt Buffalo Main Event is brought to you by Kaz Electronics, your gadget source with referral rewards.
We're back on Labatt Buffalo Main Event. Brad Ryder along with Bob Gaughan. Our guest this week from BuffaloBills.com is Chris Brown. The NFL Draft coming up shortly, but the Bills have been pretty active this offseason in free agency, addressing some of the needs. Good offseason, I would say, so far.
Yeah, I think people were a little surprised seeing Marcus Stroud and that trade acquisition happening so quickly in free agency, especially with the way defensive tackles were moving around the league via trade. So I think for the Bills to be a part of that, especially with the Jets helping their defensive tackle situation in their own division, I think it was a big acquisition for them because, as we all know, run defense has been a sore subject for the last 3 years.
Jacksonville must feel that Marcus Stroud is done. Just can't play anymore. What are your feelings about Stroud?
I think that Jack Del Rio is just looking to turn the page there. I think he felt that Stroud's best football was behind him. But talking to him, I feel that he wants to prove that he's got a lot more football left in him, and I think a new venue now only adds to that. I think he was motivated already to come off the injury and prove he could still be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Now that he's been vanquished by his former team, I think he's all the more motivated.
And with Stroud coming in, triplets on his way out, and it's sort of a changing of the guard for the Bills. Obviously, general manager Marv Levy no longer there. How much of a switch is it? How much do you expect the new regime minus Marv to make a mark? I've been saying for a while, I think he was sort of a figurehead to an extent anyway, so it's not a huge leap to move forward. But is there a big change here?
I think he was just there as an overseer and one to build consensus. And that was something that I think organizationally they had to get back to, and what better person to have in that role than Marv, who pretty much is the poster child for building consensus and a familial kind of relationship within an organization. I think they got back to that family kind of atmosphere in the organization with Marv on board. And as Marv had said, it was only a 2-year commitment. I don't think a lot is going to change. Their draft philosophy is going to remain the same, which is basically, best player available, unless position-wise, 2 players are so close that they can fill a need with one of those, they'll take that guy. But I think draft philosophy, they stay the same. I think how they want to build this team stays the same. Because I think Dick Duran, in a lot of ways, is the same type of coach that Marv Levy was.
I was a little disappointed they didn't get Brian Johnson. I didn't think he was asking for that much money. Your thoughts about them not getting Brian Johnson?
I think what happened there was the Bills presented him an offer, 4-year offer, wasn't the money he wanted, and he said, well, then I just want a 1-year deal. And the Bills aren't the type of team that's going to offer a 1-year deal to a 26-year-old football player. They'll give it to a Jason Whittle who's 32 or 33 years old, but they're trying to build something here over the long haul. They wanted Brian Johnson committed to this team at a price that obviously wasn't to his liking, so he said, well, I want a 1-year deal then. Bills didn't want to do that, so he looked elsewhere for a 1-year deal and got it.
Does that make wide receiver priority number 1 in the draft?
I think it's a high priority, but I think everybody is just assuming that at 11 the Bills are going to take a wide receiver. I'm not convinced they're going to do that, because if you look at the way the draft is and you look at the Bills' draft philosophy, it's based on value. If they don't feel there is a good receiver value at 11, and I think it's debatable whether there is, I don't think they're going to take a receiver. So now you say, well, what position does have good value at 11? I think cornerback has very good value at 11. I think the only problem there is the 3 teams ahead of them, you got the Patriots, the Jets, and the Saints. They all need cornerbacks. So the value that they think might be there, by the time they get to 11, the 3 cornerbacks that are good value at 11 might be gone. So I think there's a realistic possibility this team trades down into the teens this year.
If they do go cornerback in the first round, what receiver do you think is there in the second round that you like, will be there in the second round?
Well, I think it depends when the run starts, because there is going to be a run there, and how many teams participate in that run from, I would say, 14 on down to about 25. You could potentially have 4 receivers come off the board. You could have 2 receivers come off the board. I think there's a chance, slight chance, that James Hardy from Indiana might be there at the top of the second. I don't know if he's going to be there at 41 for the Bills. So now you're talking Earl Bennett from Vanderbilt. You got a couple of receivers like that are probably going to fit into the second round somewhere. But the Devin Thomases, the Limas Swedes, they're probably going to be gone in that 15 to 25 range.
When I'm thinking about the Bills getting a receiver, I'm thinking about them getting size at the position. Is that what they're thinking as well?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they're even looking at guys like Deshaun Jackson from Cal, who is, lightning in a bottle, but he's only 5'9", and stature of Roscoe Parrish. They already have Roscoe Parrish. They need a big guy, a red zone threat. Dick Duran said it in February. We need a big receiver. We need a guy that can shield defenders, a guy you can throw to even when he's not open because he can win those battles in the air. They need that in the red zone. They don't have a red zone target in their receiving core, at tight end or receiver.
Tight end, then, was that the third-round pick for the Buffalo Bills in this scenario?
Yeah.
Cornerback, receiver, is it definitely tight end? Then
I would think if cornerback is the first pick, I think they look at what's on the board in the second round and decide, is the better value at tight end or is the better value at receiver? And then I think they pick accordingly. And whatever they don't take in the second round, I think they take in the third round. And, I think tight end, you can make the argument that teams generally don't gobble up the tight ends as quickly as they gobble up the receivers. So logic would say receiver second round, you could still get a pretty decent tight end in the third round because tight ends, finding the complete package tight end is so hard these days in the league. You're either a pass catcher or a blocker. There are very few guys that can do both coming out of college.
Obviously, you won't disregard defense entirely, but they seem to be pretty comfortable with where they sit from front to back once you fill in that corner spot. Where else do you look if you're the Bills when addressing the defensive side of the ball in the draft?
I think they still want to get some linebacker depth, not only for defense but for special teams, because free agency-wise they've lost a lot of guys. I don't think Josh Stamer's going to be back. Mario Hagan, slight chance he's back in the fold. But these are guys they don't want to pay fifth- and sixth-year player money just to play special teams. So now they got to refortify that position to help Bobby April on special teams by drafting guys. So I think linebacker players are a realistic possibility. I also think a defensive end, a fourth defensive end, if they don't sign a guy like James Hall, came in for a free agent visit, I think they might look at defensive end, but now we're talking fifth, sixth, seventh round.
Talk about the quarterback position. Do they trade J.P. Lossman on draft day, and do they draft a quarterback in the late rounds?
I think at the earliest, if they trade J.P. Lossman, it happens on draft weekend. And again, when you're trading a quarterback, that's such a tricky thing because it's such an integral position to a football team. What do teams want? How much are they willing to pay? And that's why I think it's going to take a while. It wouldn't shock me if we get through draft weekend and J.P. Lossman's still on the roster. I mean, we could go all the way to training camp until some team in the league suffers an injury at the quarterback position, and then suddenly there's a major need.
Chris Brown of BuffaloBills.com, our guest here on Labatt Buffalo Main Event. We'll be back to wrap things up. Bob Gunn, along with me, Brad Ryder. It's Labatt Buffalo Main Event.